born into slavery in 16th century Spain. It's not exactly a story you'd expect to have a happy ending. But Juan Latino's life? Well, it's one that really makes you rethink those expectations.
It really is. Talk about defying the odds. Here we are in a time and place where your destiny was pretty much decided at birth, especially for, you know, a person of African descent. And yet, Juan Latino rises to become this scholar, this poet, a respected figure during the Renaissance. It's incredible.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, the incredible life of Juan Latino. We're starting around 1518, right? With his birth. He's born Juan de Sessa, at least that's what the records tell us. And while we can't and shouldn't gloss over the harsh realities of being born into slavery,
Right.
the sources we're looking at today paint this picture of a young man with this incredible intellect,
Yeah.
like this thirst for knowledge that just couldn't be ignored.
And you hit on a really important point there. It wasn't just luck, right? Literacy for enslaved people during this era, almost unheard of. Those in power saw it as dangerous even. So for Juan to not only be allowed but encouraged to learn, I mean, that speaks volumes about him. Someone saw his potential and they did something about it. It makes you wonder, who were these people?
It really does, those unsung heroes who helped shape his path. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So tell me more about this education. He was allowed to sit in on the lessons of the Duke of Sessa's son.
Yeah, Gonzalo. Imagine that. Young Juan, not just like observing from the sidelines, but actually participating in these lessons meant for nobility. You can almost picture him just absorbing everything, surpassing even his noble classmate.
You're like a movie. This unlikely pair learning side by side. It really underscores just how powerful a single opportunity can be.
It really does. And for Juan, this wasn't just a fleeting moment of support, a chance encounter, this access to education. It changed everything. He didn't just learn to read and write, he excelled.
To the point that he earned a degree.
Try two. From the University of Granada, no less. Latin and Greek.
The University of Granada. For someone in his position, that's unheard of, right?
Almost unimaginable. And this is where I think Juan's story goes from, improbable to absolutely remarkable. A black man in Renaissance Europe achieving higher education. It makes you question everything we think we know, doesn't it? How many other brilliant minds like Juan Latino are out there lost to history simply because of who they were, where they came from?
It really does make you wonder. But it's easy to get caught up in the academic side of things. Degrees, universities. It's almost like a checklist, right?
Yeah.
But Juan's story, it's about breaking down those barriers. His intellect, it didn't just earn him freedom, it earned him a place in society. He became a professor.
Let's just pause there for a second. Becoming a professor. Back then, it meant something. It was a testament to, exceptional scholarship. And we're talking about a time when it wasn't a common path for, anyone, let alone someone of Juan's background.
Right. First at the Cathedral School of Granada.
Exactly.
And then, get this, back at the University of Granada, his alma mater. Can you imagine what that must have been like? For him?
Yeah.
For the other professors? The students?
It's almost like this ripple effect, right? A former enslaved person now lecturing on Latin grammar at one of the most prestigious institutions in Spain. It forces you to confront those deeply ingrained prejudices of the era. His race, his background, that they should have been insurmountable obstacles. And
Well,
yet...
persevered. But wait, there's more?
Uh-huh.
As if being a groundbreaking professor wasn't enough, Juan was also this incredibly gifted poet.
Oh, absolutely. And his mastery of Latin, it wasn't just confined to academia, thankfully. It found expression in these beautiful, complex works of literature.
And you mentioned earlier just how important Latin was during the Renaissance.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a bit more for us?
Of course. Latin. It was more than just a language back then. It was a tool, the language of scholarship, diplomacy, power. So when Juan chooses to write in Latin, he's not just showing off his skills, he's elevating his work, giving it this timeless quality. And maybe most importantly, it allowed him to speak directly to those elite circles of Renaissance society.
It's fascinating how strategically he used language, isn't it?
It really is.
He wrote elegies, epigrams, even textbooks. Talk about range.
He was prolific.
He was. But there's one work that seems to really stand out. This epic poem, the Austriad. What makes this piece so significant?
Well, the Austriada is interesting because it wasn't just, a display of Juan's impressive Latin. It was a strategic masterpiece, celebrating a major historical event, the Spanish victory at the Battle of Lepanto. By choosing this subject, he inserted himself into the political landscape. He was sparking dialogue through his art.
He took this classical form, the epic poem, and infused it with commentary on, contemporary society. It's like this dialogue between the past and the present. Are there any specific examples of how he achieved this?
Absolutely. So in the Austria, Juan doesn't shy away from, highlighting the bravery of the soldiers, regardless of their background. He writes, and I'm paraphrasing here, black skin, white skin, under the sun, all courage shines the same. And that might seem like a simple line, but in the context of 16th century Spain, it takes on a whole new meaning. He's subtly challenging the social hierarchy, reminding readers that heroism, it knows no racial boundaries.
Wow, he really wove these powerful messages into his art. It wasn't just poetry, it was social commentary.
It was his way of saying, I, Juan Latino, a black man in this society, I have a voice too, and I have something to say.
It's amazing, isn't it, how he used his art to challenge the norms of his time.
It really is.
But speaking of challenging norms, we can't move on without talking about his marriage. To Anna Karloval, this wasn't just a personal milestone, it was a huge social statement.
Absolutely. I mean, interracial marriages in 16th century Spain, practically unheard of. And for someone in one's position, even more so. This wasn't just love. This was a testament to the respect he'd earned, the recognition.
And we have to remember, Anna, she wasn't just anyone. She was from a noble family, which makes their story even more incredible, and I'm sure more than a little controversial at the time.
Oh, absolutely. Talk about turning heads. They were defying these deep-seated societal conventions. It must have taken incredible courage for both of them.
It really speaks to the strength of their commitment, doesn't it? To be willing to challenge those norms.
It really does. It just goes to show you, even in the most rigid societies, there are these individual stories that challenge the status quo.
It's incredible to think about. Juan Latino, this scholar, this poet, a husband, a man who, against all odds, carved his own path. But what does it all mean? What can we take away from his story?
That's the big question, isn't it? I think Juan Latino's story, it serves as this powerful counter-narrative to what we think we know about history. He didn't just survive in a system that was designed to limit him, he thrived. And his achievements, they force us to confront our assumptions about race, about potential, about the power of education.
He reminds us that history isn't just about kings and queens and battles. It's about the individuals, the ones who dare to dream bigger.
Exactly.
Juan Latino's legacy is not just in his poetry, his scholarship, it's in the inspiration.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit, it can triumph.
As we wrap up our deep dive today, I keep coming back to this one question. How many other hidden figures are out there? Whose stories haven't we heard? And what can those stories teach us about our world, about ourselves? Something to think about, isn't it?